We've now reached the last section in Chapter 5. It's 5.8, Solving Equations by Factoring. And you have spent a lot of time in lessons 5, 6, and 5, 7 taking trinomials like this one in red here and the one in green, and you have factored them and gotten them to a point where, for example, on the red one, you know that the factors of 15 add to 8, and you would break that out and say, all right, that's like x, in this case, plus 5, and x plus 3. You did ones like the one in green, and you broke those out, and I said I need the factors of 12 that have a sum of 13, and then you would work factoring by grouping, and this one comes out to be 3x squared plus 12x uh, plus x plus 4. And then you would did your common factors, and you said, like in this one, we would say 3x, and that leaves behind x plus 4. And then the last two have a common factor of 1. So then I have x plus 4 also. And then I would write 3x plus 1 times x plus 4. So everything you've been doing is to get yourself to a point where you have the parenthesis times parenthesis, and that's what you've done so far. Well, lesson 5.8 puts everything we've been doing in chapter 5 together. You're going to be finding common factors. You're going to be factoring like this. You're going to be factoring here. You will also be doing some multiplying of binomial times binomial or monomial times a binomial, but that all comes out in chapter or lesson 8 here from chapter 5. The goal is when you get to a step like this one here, we have x minus 3 times x plus 5. When we say an equation, a lot of times with trinomials and what you're working towards is something that equals 0. So I have two numbers multiplied together. I have to have an answer of 0. In order to get an answer of 0, only one of the two numbers has to equal 0. 0 times anything is 0. So what I do when I get to this point here, we've done a whole bunch of factoring, and we have an equal 0. We have an x minus 3 times x plus 5. So what I have to do is this. I break this apart, and I break it into two small equations. I say x minus 3 equals 0. And since it's an equation, I'm going to say or, because I can only use one at a time. And I say x plus 5 equals 0. And next, then I solve the two equations. They're very simple one-step equations. This was x equals 3 or x equals negative 5. So in other words, if I put 3 into this set of parentheses up here for this factor, 3 minus 3 is 0. So then 0 times, and it doesn't, if I put 3 here, 3 plus 5 is 8. But 0 times 8 is still 0, and that's what I'm looking for. So I needed 3 or negative 5. Negative 5 works on this one, 3 works on the left one. If I have a situation like this where I have a plain x on the outside, and then I have x minus 9, hey, this is pretty easy. Either x has to equal 0, or x minus 9 equals 0. So the x equals 0 is pretty simple. I have then x minus 9 equals 0. Well, I add 9 to both sides, so x equals 9. So one of these two numbers, if I was to put them back into here, is going to give me an answer of 0 on this side. And what we're all trying to get down is that once we reach this point, how do we solve for 0? And this is the next step you're adding to all of the things you've done now in chapter 5. So let's take a look with an actual trinomial. Here's one that says 3x squared plus 5x minus 2. All right, this is one where I need, since I have a number in front of x squared, I need the factors of negative 6 that has a sum of positive 5. Factors of negative 6, the sum of positive 5. All right, that pretty much means I have to have one number be negative, one be positive. Since I have a positive 5, I'm looking at the factors that are 6 and negative 1, and that gives me a sum of positive 5. So I'm going to do my factoring by grouping here, which we've done before. And I'm going to say 3x squared plus 6x minus 1x and minus 2. And I say equals 0. I keep the equals 0 for now. And I just do my factoring by grouping. The common factor in the first two terms is 3x. Parenthesis. What's left in the first term is just x. What's left in the second term is plus 2. And I'm looking now factoring grouping by these two, and notice I have an x plus 2 in here, so what am I going to factor out of here to get x plus 2? That's correct, it's going to be the negative 1. And I then write x, and negative 2 divided by negative 1, that's plus 2, equals 0. And now I then write, since I have a common factor of x plus 2, I write 3x minus 1 times x plus 2 equals 0. And now I add the last skill that I just showed you a minute ago. I set up two separate little equations. I say 3x minus 1 will have to equal 0, or x plus 2 has to equal 0. Doesn't matter which one, I just need one of them because I'm trying to find out how to get to an answer of 0. So one of these two factors has to equal 0. I add 1 to both sides. 3x equals 1. Divide by 3, x equals, and we do use the fraction 1/3. Do not use 0.3 repeating. Use the fraction 1/3. On the other equation, I subtract 2. X equals negative 2. So I have x equals 1/3 or x equals negative 2. Either one of those numbers, if I put that back into this trinomial, I will get 0 on the left side, and that will equal 0. All right. Next example. I'll try to finish this up quickly here. Here's one where I have a fraction in here, and I have a 3 over here. In order to factor, I have to have all three terms on the same side of the equal sign. So I will move the 3 over here, and I'm going to say 2x squared plus 5 halves x, and I'm going to move the 3 from the right side of the equation to the left side. So I then say minus 3, because I have to subtract 3 on both sides. 3 minus 3 leaves 0. We want, when we are factoring, these are called quadratics, and when we are factoring, we want things set equal to 0. So we'll get all of the terms on one side of the equation before we start to do our factoring work. Now with a fraction here, I'm not a big fan of those, so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to multiply everything by 2, both sides of my equation. So now I'm going to write 4x squared plus, and 2 times 5 is 10. 10 divided by 2 leaves 5x. Notice that's just my numerator. And 2 times minus 3 is minus 6. And 2 times 0 is 0. Now I'm going to do my factoring. I need the factors. Are there any common factors? Not yet, not on this one, so there's no common factors to take out. So what I'm going to do is I have the factors of negative 24, because 4 times negative 6, 4 times negative 6, negative 24. I need a sum of 5. So let's see here, negative 24, sum of 5. All right, well, I'm not getting anything off the top of my head very quickly here, but I do know since I have a positive number here, when I write the two factors down, one has to be negative and one has to be positive. So I want the positive one to be further from 0. So I will start with 24 and 1. That's 23. Then I'm going to go to 12 and negative 2. That's positive 10. And then I'm going to use 8 and negative 3. And some of you watching this may have figured that out before I got to that point, because there's our positive 5. So I do my factoring by grouping. 4x squared plus 8x minus 3x minus 6 equals 0. 4x is the common factor in the first two terms, leaving x plus 2. Negative 3 is the common factor in the second two terms. That will leave me x plus 2. Answer equals 0. Now I have a common factor here of x plus 2, so I'm just doing still completing the factoring by grouping. 4x minus 3, parentheses, and I go parentheses x plus 2 equals 0. So now I break these apart. I want 4x minus 3 to equal 0, or x plus 2 to equal 0. And as I solve, I say 4x equals 3, x equals 3/4. Use the fraction. Your answer key will have the fraction in it. The other side is just x equals -2. Okay, and that's it for now. So what I want you to start with is on page 324, and I want you to do the following problems. I want you to do numbers 2 and then numbers 3 through 15 odd. Problem 2 and numbers 3 through 15 odd. Do not turn it in. You keep this, so you'll watch video 2 before you'll turn something in. All right, let me know whatever I can help you with.